Welcome to WYCD Wicked, that stands for What You Can Do. Let's start it off by acknowledging the day that it is. It is the most important day on the calendar. That is, of course, Wicked Foxy Dragon's birthday. Happy birthday, Foxy! Oh, that's a cool one. That's, in fact, the coolest. I had fingers crossed that, my niece would hold out, and she did the opposite. Happy birthday, Foxy! And congratulations on fantastic timing. Let's say hello. Hello, the anti-corporatist environmental coffee house. Hello there. Yeah, I just watched your show. That was great. Oh, I love the character. The indigenous heretic. Hello, sup, comrades. Christy Z, good to see you. Pinkerbell, hello there. And Wireless Mike, good to see you. Shade Dragon, good to see you. We got everybody coming on in. I love it. We're going to do something a little bit different. There might be serious things to discuss. If you want, then we'll discuss them. Here's the spooky pitch I have for this idea. First of all, let's set up the accoutrement. There we are. Appropriately spooky. Oh. All right, now thing number 2. I've got a hound here. Oh, he's a terrifying beast of the moors. And he's terrifying. Excuse me. And we're gonna do some rando content, of course. I'd like to read a Hollywood-style pitch I recently sent to British comedian Richard Iowati. And here's what I would like you to think about, because we're going to take viewer suggestions. What is a topic you would like me to argue for from the position of people that you normally have to sway? So, for example, I will be arguing to kick us off. My own suggestion. I'll be arguing for a ceasefire in Gaza from the perspective of an Israeli, somebody whose countrymen were just attacked. I realize there are lots of Israeli folks that are asking for peace without needing a situational bribe. But the thing that really annoys me about the way progressives end up talking about things is we go right to the principle. You should do this because it is right, or you must do that because the other thing would be wrong, and so on and so forth. And I think that is needlessly difficult. Generally speaking, progressives, when they have plans for things, they have plans that benefit everybody because they consider everybody's well-being. That's sort of what being a progressive is all about. Genuinely trying to help folks. So guess what? Peace in Gaza is good for Israelis. It's even good for the ultra-nationalist Israelis. I'm going to argue from that perspective. But I also want to keep it fun. And I think we are in need of the occasional piece of goofiness. So we're not just seen as a bunch of sad sacks, frankly. Happy Halloween. Let's start this off silly. Proper silly. You know, I realize I made it seem like I had everything queued up and ready to go. That's really just what I was saying before I did any of the queuing. Oh, this is just painful. I'm returning my pumpkin. There we are. Come on now. Come on. Finally, here we are. Here we go. I might need to clean up my OBS a little bit. It is truly a cluster of past ideas. All right, let's record this thing. Folks, I wrote a masterpiece. I mean, it's one of those things that made me wish I went into a different line of work, because this idea, which I expect is going to come out tonight, I'm very good at estimating things. This idea is so good. It's essentially like having written Star Wars, but knowing it ahead of time, like knowing how great it's going to be. That's what I've written. So before I even give you the idea, let me just say you're welcome. Second of all, I want to make it clear I can't be, bothered to actually get off my butt and make the thing. So instead, what I've done is I've donated the idea to Richard Iowati. If you're not familiar with him, if you're not familiar with Richard Iowati, let me explain. He is the guy from the IT crowd. He is the guy from Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, one of the fancier doctors. I believe he does Travel Man as well. He's done a number of great comedies, and I think he would be perfect for the lead in a show that I pitched him on Twitter, which I will now read to you. It's called Richard Iowati Beats Up a Werewolf. I sent this yesterday. Dear Richard Iowati, I hope this thread finds you well. Please consider making the greatest streaming show of all time. Richard Iowati Beats Up a Werewolf. I can't be bothered, so you can keep what I presume will be wheelbarrows full of money. Now, because the way Twitter now functions is terrible, the rest of that's not visible. But I'm going to read you the entire thread off my screen right now. P.S. Try to have it done by tomorrow. One sheet. Richard Iowati beats up a werewolf. Richard Iowati gets into a petty dispute with a werewolf, but is thrashed on account of it's a monster. No one believes him about the existence of monsters except the guy who is the werewolf. Next month it happens again. Richard Iowati refuses to use silver on the werewolf since it's not that kind of dispute. He goes to a new self-defense class each month, saying, "Okay, so hypothetically, the werewolf clobbers him just a little less every month." I'm chuckling at the idea of a fired-up Iowati impatiently waiting for Matt Berry, obviously, to turn into a werewolf. Matt Berry, "Mate, I'm telling you, it's not worth it." Richard Iowati rolling up sleeves. "No, that mother pissed on my Sandero, and I will have an apology for it." Cut to reused footage of Richard Iowati getting punched in the face by a furry fist. Just the same thing every time. But he gets like a pat on the back, saying, "Hey, you did a little bit better that time." Along the way, Richard Iowati slaps around Dracula and the Mothman or whatever. I assume, Richard Iowati, you're already furiously dialing your comedy friends to get this made, so I'll let you get to it. I look forward to seeing Richard Iowati beats up a werewolf. Your old pal, Jake. I gotta say, I asked him to get it done by tonight, or by today, really, and I haven't seen it premiering yet. But we still have a full 90 minutes of the holiday left. They might be doing like a midnight showing. So let's hope. Let's hope it gets out. He hasn't responded, but I assume that's because he's busy filming with Matt Berry and the gang. Well, hello, B-Cat and K. Hello, Looney Tunes 9000. Switching screens as my phone is about to die. Oh no. And Squisher King, your birthday too. Oh no, it's your mom's birthday. Well, happy birthday to her. She shares a birthday with a fellow queen, our own wicked Foxy Dragon. Pinkerbell, oh good lord, LMAO. Yeah, you see, it writes itself. Ooh, Unfriendly Atheist. Station 11 is incredible, by the by. Son of a gun. The chat jumped past me. What is Station 11? Miniseries. It's an American post-apocalyptic dystopian fiction miniseries created by Patrick Somerville based on the 2014 novel of the same name. I will give it a gander. Thank you. I would totally watch that, says Wireless Mike. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Unfriendly Atheist, howdy, Jake. Sweet jacket. Thank you. I dig it. I'll tell you what, I am in costume tonight. Here, right, chow, is my costume. I'm being this guy from Super Crooks on Netflix. He's Johnny Bolt. I somehow managed to overcommit to a lazy costume. Oi. All right, so the name of the game, if you guys are interested, is to pitch, is to do arguments. I'd like for us to practice doing arguments, and I'll do the examples tonight. If you guys toss some at me to improv, essentially. But arguing from unusual perspectives. So if you would like to hear an argument for something that you want to happen, but argued from the interest of a party you might hypothetically find yourself needing to appeal to, toss them in the comments and make sure you do at what you can do, and then the suggestions so I can see it easily. But toss them in the comments. I'll get us started with some incredibly, let's say, selfish Israeli arguments. This is not to say that for peace in Gaza. This is not to say that even the average Israeli does not already want peace in Gaza. But let's assume that there is somebody with no sympathy whatsoever for human beings outside of the borders of Israel. Here are the arguments I would make to that person to cease fire in Gaza. Stand by. So this is essentially a fight between people who attack civilians and people who attack leaders. Hamas attacks civilians. Start by asking yourself, are you better than Hamas, and why is that? The imprecision of the current strategy will lead to a higher Israeli body count. We understand that it will also lead to a nightmarishly high body count for Palestinians. But it will lead to an Israeli body count higher. A higher Israeli body count as well, I mean. It will also make it more difficult to get the hostages back, because the hostages' lives clearly have very little value to Netanyahu under the current strategy. Hamas, I will point out, is using a familiar strategy that depends on the Israeli right wing's predictable behavior, and they are following the strategy Hamas wants them to. They are overcommitting. They are increasing the numbers of Hamas, not decreasing them. I realize they're killing a lot of members of Hamas. They are increasing their numbers because as the U.S. knew plenty well, but we charged ahead anyway. When you tear through a civilian population to get at a very few number of people, you create more enemies than you kill. Long term, the current strategy is more dangerous for Israeli civilians, Israeli military, Israelis in general. And in fact, it's more dangerous for the long-term survival of Israel. But you cannot, I understand, you cannot let the killing of 1,400 civilians go unanswered. I'm not unsympathetic to that. I recommend precision strikes of enemy leadership. They are the best way to get justice. Precision strikes meaning no civilian casualties. At some point, these people will have to be by themselves. Israel has arguably the best intelligence service in the world. Use that. Offer life imprisonment for those who were involved in the attack and turn themselves in, but otherwise, all bets are off. Enemy combatants are enemy combatants. You may do as you please so long as you are not attacking civilians, because that is what Hamas wants Israel to do. And above all else, you should not do what Hamas wants you to do. That is my pitch. An Israeli, a selfish Israeli perspective on why they should have peace. Let's see if we have any suggestions. My costume is my bed, says the anti-corporatist. Fair enough. Unfriendly atheist. I might have to get strung out on Netflix next. Man, I tell you, that's what I'm going to do. Wicked Foxy Dragon. We already argued today, Jake. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we had a good debate. You can't be mad about that, though. I think you won. Snixabia is a fixed girl dog and it. I don't know why it would be. Public utility. Boondocks versus Dr. Katz. Ooh. Boondocks versus Dr. Katz. Which side do you want me to take? I could take either. If you want to, all right, I'll do both real quick. Aaron Magruder is one of the funniest human beings on Earth. It's pro Boondocks. Aaron Magruder is one of the funniest beings on Earth. He has a amazing sense of humor. He also has an amazing take on politics. He was about 10 years ahead of his time on just about every issue. For that alone, it's worth watching the Boondocks. But also, the animation is fluid. It's just genuinely a joy to watch. And the jokes did not age poorly. That's untrue of so much comedy. Now let's argue in favor of Dr. Katz. You get to see Sarah Silverman's sister, Laura Silverman, doing some of her only voice acting roles. And she's fantastic, very funny. You get to see a very young Archer and Bob from Bob's Burgers, H. John Benjamin, as the son of Dr. Katz. You also get to see a who's who of 90s New York comedians, which of course also means a who's who of future Majority Report guests. I could genuinely argue for either being the best, although the squiggle vision for Dr. Katz is something I will always, always treasure. But the idea is for me to argue from other perspectives. Hey, Bob Treesh, good to see you. Environmental Coffee House, you look good in the dude suit. Thank you. Wicked Foxy Dragon, not mad. I know. Oh, I'm so glad you had fun, Environmental Coffee House. I gotta tell you, that was a heck of a character. Bad Lefty, the idea of less Palestinians more than he cares about the hostages' lives, in my opinion. I'm not quite sure I understand the comment. The jacket really ties the room together. Well, thank you. Oh, public utility. Boondocks can be found on YouTube. Absolutely. Well, tell you what, guys. I'm gonna keep this relatively short. I don't want us to to be away from our intoxicants too long. But here's the deal: there is one thing that I've been waiting to see. Cat Black put out a new Halloween themed breakdown of a classic horror movie. Does anybody remember Sleepaway Camp? Anybody remember Sleepaway Camp? It's slightly transphobic. It's a little bit problematic. I enjoyed the hell out of it though when I was a wee lad. So I'm gonna watch Cat Black's, and I invite you to join me. Cat Black's discussion on why this movie I truly did enjoy is problematic, and I will measure it in terms of spooky jack-o'-lanterns, in terms of how guilty I feel about it. All right, gang, the question is, how bad should I feel for having truly enjoyed Sleepaway Camp back in the day? I gotta say, even as a kid, I thought that the shock of the twist was, like, it made no sense to me. Like, I just didn't fundamentally understand why the person acted the way they did. But the acting was so good. It was so good. Let's check out. Oh my gosh, Bob Treesh, remember Cat People? Yes, I remember Cat People. I play that song easily once a month in its entirety. Putting out fire with gasoline. Yeah. I know Cat People, for fuck's sake. Come on, that's a classic. Anyway, here's Cat Black making me feel bad about enjoying Sleepaway Camp.
Have you ever been to a sleepaway camp? When I was like 11 years old, my parents sent me away to Arrowhead Bible Camp. And while I resent the indoctrination, it's still one of the few trips I've taken over my lifetime that I think about pretty much every day. On one hand, it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, we were surrounded by nature. And as a kid who grew up in a small little suburb, it felt really great to be surrounded by trees and, water.
Side note, there is something so GD mystical about being in the kind of forest that has moss growing on everything. It's not just the dirt and the leaves and the what have you, but moss growing up trunks, growing on rocks. I enjoy moss. Peat, ideally.
And animals and so many other things, because the closest I ever got to being around nature is the creek down the street. But one of the things that also sticks into my mind about camp was how much I dreaded the lodging situation. I mean, this was a Christian camp where it was co-ed, but the girls were here and the boys were there. And I might have been a very well-behaved Christian child back then, but I was also a very obviously queer child. And that led to me getting bullied quite a bit.
Oh.
And so I really dreaded being in these situations where I had to be away from home, away from my family, away from my friends for such a long period of time, living with boys because that's who I had to live with at the time, and just how sort of isolating that felt for me. So I guess camp sort of conjures these sort of positive and negative feelings for me. And I guess you could say the character Angela in this week's film may have had some very similar feelings, though we both reacted to these feelings quite differently. Sleepaway Camp is a 1983 slasher film written and directed by Robert Hiltzik. At the start of the film, a man named John Baker takes his two children, Angela and Peter, to a lake near Camp Arawak. In a freak accident, John, along with one of his children, is killed by a motorboat that runs them over as they're in the water. 8 years later, we discover that one of the children, Angela, has survived. She's gone to live with her Aunt Martha Thomas and her...
Okay. I to give you a sense of how addled my brain is, I had forgotten that most important part of the whole movie, the setup of the movie. Okay, so there were two kids. One got, and now I know. If you saw it before, now I remember the thing. But yeah, I had utterly forgotten that part.
Cousin Ricky. One day, Aunt Martha decides to send Angela and Ricky to Camp Arawak, the same exact camp right next to the lake where the accident happened.
Hey, this is my cousin Angela. How you doing?
Why would you? Why? I understand. I just oh. Slasher movie setups are I think they are meant to be frustrating. I think that's part of it. Is you're supposed to go, what?
She's kind of shy, I guess. You know, first time away from home and all.
Angela is still clearly very traumatized by the accident. She's very peculiar, never swimming or showering in front of other girls. Not to mention, she hasn't spoken much since the accident, and this starts to really annoy other campgoers, especially Judy, the newly blossomed girl on camp who all of the boys are drooling over.
What are you looking at?
She really only starts speaking after meeting Ricky's friend Paul, who asks her about the accident and apologizes for it happening. The two start to develop somewhat of a romantic relationship.
Whoop, gonna get interesting. Let me just compliment Kat Black. Every time I see one of her videos, it makes me think like, I gotta up that quality. Gotta up that quality. Just the ambient music. She puts together a real good video. Also, she has interesting political points. If you want to make her part of your repertoire, you won't regret it. But purely from a production standpoint, what a good job. Genuinely a pleasure.
As Angela and Ricky spend time at the camp, there's a series of gruesome murders that occur. Mel, the owner of the camp, tries his best to keep the murders hush-hush, but eventually they start spinning out of control to the point where he...
Whoa, Mel. Oh, wow. We're just going to leave that there for a second. I know it's going to hurt the monetization, whatever. Can I just side note from the stuff Kat Black will talk about, and I'm sure Kat Black will be quite right. We have known that people that are trying to do things for basically greedy capitalists are a problem. It's been in our cultural consciousness for so long. Think back all the way to the very first movies. Who was the stereotypical movie villain? You must pay the rent, but I can't pay the rent. But you must pay the rent, but I can't pay the rent. But you must pay the rent. I'll save you. You must pay the rent. The landlord. Twirling a mustache, wearing a top hat, tying people up on railroad tracks. An evil rich guy. In Jaws. What's the mayor's problem? Why does the mayor endanger the lives of the people he's supposed to protect? Money. It's tourist season and the beach. Sleepaway camp. This guy trying to cover up murder. Because it's part of it'll affect his business. We have had this understanding in our cultural consciousness for a long time, but we have done nothing about it. That is a secondary takeaway from this video that I would ask you to consider. But we got to get to the issue at hand.
Even ends up being a victim of this mysterious killer. Now, before Mel was murdered, he started to put together that pretty much every single person who was murdered had mistreated Angela in some way. And because Ricky is so overly protective of his cousin, he started to suspect that Ricky may be the killer. As Paul and Angela's relationship develops, Paul keeps pushing for them to be intimate, and Angela ultimately ends up rejecting him. Once that happens, he ends up running to Judy, who is all too happy to take the opportunity to hurt Angela's feelings. Angela actually ends up catching Judy and Paul hooking up, and she runs away.
Angela! Angela!
Hey, where you going?
You're a real scumbag, Judy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Judy getting hers in this one.
Know that?
Fuck you, Ricky.
The next day, Paul apologizes to her, and Angela seemingly expresses an interest of being intimate with him and tells him to meet her at a certain part of the camp. Camp counselors would ultimately discover Angela at that location in the water, completely naked, and when she's naked, it's revealed that Angela is actually a boy. Apparently, at the start of the film, Angela was actually the child that passed away, leaving Peter behind. And when Aunt Martha adopted Peter, she ended up raising him as a little girl instead, giving him the name of his deceased sister. And the film ends on a very disturbing still image of a completely naked Angela holding Paul's severed head with male genitalia in full view. And she lets out this really loud, scary, animalistic scream. Yep, and that's how it ends. Okay, so
All right, I'm about ready to take my comeuppance from Cat Black, but just give me a second here. Because as unfortunate as that idea for a movie monster is, the acting, the kid that they got to play Angela was so good, and that last shot was terrifying. Not because, oh no, trans, but because she had a severed head, and she was going, making the scary face and doing the excellent scream. I'm going to feel bad for having liked this movie. Not really. I was more ignorant then, or rather, I wasn't thinking that deeply then. But there's my defense of it. If you're not on guard, if you weren't on guard for just the most idiotic takes like we are now, it is a damn fine film. Aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play?
a really quick side story about this movie before I get into all of the analysis and conversation. The first time I ever saw this movie, I was kind of in this relationship with this guy who had never been with a transgender woman, and our entire relationship at the time, especially because it was like in the middle of like quarantine and we were being like quarantine buddies, was basically us watching horror movies and having sex. And he was really excited to show me this film, and I don't think at the time it really clicked to me how offensive the film was.
See, I watched this when I was like maybe 16. I just do want to say as a side note, we're only going to watch this thing of Cat Black's until I feel bad for having liked it. That's the cutoff for me. You guys let me know what the cutoff for you is. Thus far, I actually feel better about having liked it. Ha.
I mean, maybe it's because the D was good and so was that indica, but I definitely didn't understand like just how offensive this movie was at the time and how odd it was for him specifically to show it to me. And when I say that it's offensive, I mean, I'm not personally like offended. We'll get into this, but I think that there's a lot of things to enjoy about this film. So I'm not like a person who's like, oh my God, I'm so offended or whatever. But at its core, the punchline of this film is that the murderer is a murderer because they're transgender. And that is a very, very overdone trope And yeah, I can't believe that I watched this movie with this guy and still thought he was like cute or whatever. But you know, I was dickmatized. It happens to the best of us. I think this is definitely a film that is a different experience once you have the information at the very, very end of the film. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that's recontextualized once you understand that Angela is actually Peter, who was forced to live the life of a young girl. Angela is a very quiet and passive character through most of the film, which means that she is often...
Wait a minute. I do need to make one correction. The killer is not the killer because they're trans. I mean, they basically are. It's basically that, but there's a key difference. It's because they've been forced to be trans, and it's not so much the transness, because there's some implications that, I mean, Angela's interested in boys. Who knows? It's that they were forced to live as their dead sibling. It's the psychological trauma of being forced to become the sibling that died. Imagine, if Hunter had been forced to change his name to Bo. Look how effed up Hunter is without that. So in defense of the indefensible, there is that. But Cat Black ain't wrong either. It's not great.
Sitting there and observing everyone around her. And one of the interesting things that I noticed when I was watching this film is that it had a lot of themes about gender. When they get to camp, the first time that Ricky runs into Paul, they have a conversation about Judy's breast development and how exciting it is to them.
Hey, Rick! Wait till you get a load of Judy! Man, oh man!
Oh, yeah?
Oh boy.
And Judy herself is sort of this embodiment of a hyper feminine ideal for a teenage girl of that era. Fun fact, Robert Hiltzik actually wanted for her character to be a blonde, but they ended up really liking the actress who they picked for Judy a lot more, even though she had a similar hairstyle to Angela. Judy is pretty, she's popular, and she's markedly more mature than the other girls around her, even having somewhat of a friendly relationship with the adult counselors. Throughout the film, Judy spends a lot of time...
I'm sorry to nitpick, but I sense that we're about to end this segment because I already feel a little bit bad. They could afford to rent out a whole camp? They couldn't afford a bottle of blonde hair dye? What is it? Seriously. They wanted the character to be blonde. Great news about actors. They pretend to be different things professionally. I'm sure this actress would have dyed her friggin' hair.
Time grooming herself and luxuriating, and there's a lot of scenes where Angela is just kind of staring at her. And knowing what you know now, you have to think what exactly is going through her mind. Is she admiring her? Is she jealous of her beauty? Is she attracted to her? There's so many layers to what could be going through her head when she's sitting there just blankly staring at the girl who is in many ways the most overt example of hyperfemininity on camp. Either way, she observes the very specific ways in which Judy cultivates her gender, and one of those ways seems to be hooking up with boys. When Angela hangs out with Ricky, she sees how the boys interact with each other, often bullying each other for not being masculine enough. There's this scene where all of the boys play baseball, and they're constantly one-upping each other about their masculinity.
We can't just let that go. Yeah, these a couple of studs right here. You want to be masculine, son? That means, all the standard masculine things. Cut off t-shirt, Daisy Duke jean shorts, sweatbands. Standard masculine things. pulling up your socks real high up to your calves, a headband for no reason. Yeah, constantly one-upping each other with their masculine.
And it seems to be this sort of tug-of-war between the two groups over which group is most masculine, and they're defining this by who ends up ultimately winning the game.
What are you gonna do with your big paycheck?
I don't know. Maybe I'll get a Corvette or something. How about you?
I think I'll take a cruise.
Hey, gee, how about some real competition next time?
Yeah, maybe the girls want a game.
And part of that tug-of-war of masculinity is, of course, hooking up with girls. Paul is in so many ways an outcast among the boys because he's one of the few boys who hasn't.
And there it is. Oh, I didn't realize Paul. I had forgotten that that guy was a virgin. Yeah, there it is. We found the moment. Yeah, once it became explicitly about gender, and Cat Black just reminded me that was the a major theme. Okay, so here the writer and the director and everybody knew the entire time exactly what they were talking about. Well, if you want to see Cat Black's whole spooky breakdown of the movie, the link is in the description. Feel free to check it out. Sleepaway Camp, entertaining movie that I now officially regret being entertained by. Cat Black, a streamer and a video essayist who I, as of yet, am not at all ashamed to be entertained by. Oh, let's check out what the Wicked community had to say about Sleepaway Camp. Looney Tunes, that's fucked up. Yeah. Rex Trek, I remember that movie. Yeah, it was pretty good. Almost a boob tube. Bad Lefty, or some girls look better with dark hair. I personally have a type, and dark hair is part of that. Totally understandable. Rex Trek, it's the early 80s. Fair enough. I was 8 in 83, says Bob Treesh. All right. 80s movies were pretty effed up, Marianne McDermott. That's true. That is true. Oh, hello there, wireless Mike. Christy Z, I have also been dickmatized, but it has been a long time. No, that's fair. Bad Lefty, LOL Jake, you also need to make another correction, sir. My BB comment wasn't so dumb. Please, bruh. No, I didn't say it was dumb. I just didn't understand it. I was reading your comment verbatim, but I was making the inflection make it make no sense because I didn't understand it. I think I took it out of context. I think it was part of a larger conversation. Squisher King, Cat Black is bae. She's amazing. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Cash does rule everything around me, Bad Lefty. All right, gang. Well, I'll tell you what. What I really, really wanted to do tonight was premiere Fight Night Animated. Instead, what I have got is a giant slice of humble pie, which I'm going to have to eat. At some point, I will finish Fight Night Animated. I have no idea when that is. However, since it's not done, let's just enjoy Halloween. Thank you all for joining me tonight. This has been a very spooky version of WYCD Wicked that stands for what you can do. I will see you next time when things are significantly less spooky, because it'll be November. My name is Johnny Bolton.
You're a monster!
have to lie to me. Don't fill your head with things and think you're free. I can smell the fear, I think you made it clear. Yeah, I could be rude, be in the mood, I could be rotten. I could be cool, mind like a fool, but never forgotten. Creeping in the dark, waiting for you. You won't like what you see. Yeah, I feel like a monster, and I'm just here to haunt you. I've become your nightmare, slipping in your dreams. I'm the definition of the worst kind of me.